Talk to you today. We're here with a very special guest who's calling us from the campaign trail as she goes across the country garnering support for her candidacy. We have Rachel Hoff, who's running for chairwoman of the Young Republican National Federation. Rachel, thanks for calling us today. Absolutely. We're glad you took some time. We know you're busy. You're used to traveling from a very early age.
I am. That's very true. I don't have a home state per se. I was born and raised on an army base over in Japan. My parents both worked for the government. They were teachers for the military school system. My mom taught kindergarten for the sons and daughters of U.S. soldiers, and my dad was a school psychologist. So I grew up overseas, and like you said, one of the two of the best parts about it really were certainly the travel around Asia and Europe and the rest of the world, and also, of course, just growing up surrounded by our men and women in uniform. There's really nothing to remind you what it means to be an American, and certainly what it means to be proud to be an American.
A lot of our readers may not be familiar with the race you're engaged in right now. There's a very heated race going on for chairperson of the National Young Republican Federation. There's two candidates, of which you are one. The other one's Audra Shea from Louisiana. You got into the race later than Audra, but something that's been very interesting about your candidacy is how quickly you've caught up. And it's turned into a close race that most people think is going to go down to the convention floor. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about why you decided to jump in?
My candidacy and the platform that my entire team is running on is to take the YRNF from our current level of success and really set us on a trajectory that takes us onward and upward. The Young Republicans in the past few years have certainly had some setbacks. Certainly in terms of the youth conservative movement, young Americans voted for Barack Obama by a 2-1 margin last fall. But also internally within the Young Republican National Federation. We've had successes recently. At the same time, there's a huge way to go for us to reach our potential as an organization, to help elect Republican candidates and to help draw more members of our generation to the party we call home. And so that's why I'm running against the current third-ranking officer in this organization. As you mentioned, I did get into the race a little bit later than my opponent. After the elections of 2008, myself and the folks that have ended up coming together in the next level team really took some time to sit back, to evaluate where the party was going, where the Young Republicans as an organization were going on state, local, and national level. And in February of this year, we launched our campaign to take the Young Republicans to the next level. Our website is YRNextlevel.com, and if you check that out, you can see exactly what we are proposing for the Young Republicans. As you mentioned, we have really caught fire around the nation. The grassroots support that we've experienced on this campaign has been truly inspiring. It is a very close race, as you mentioned, and it's going to come down to an old-fashioned convention in Indianapolis this summer. And I'm confident that with the grassroots support that we have in New Jersey and in states around the country, we will have victory on the floor in Indianapolis, and I look forward to meeting with all the delegates there at convention this summer.
As you talked about a moment ago, Rachel, Obama has come along and really been able to galvanize young people to support his party and the causes he fights for. What do we have to do to make Republicans cool again so that we can attract young Republicans and kind of revitalize our party?
Matt, one of the things that I like to point out when I talk about the youth vote is that it's not all about Barack Obama, as they've shifted Democrat in the past few years. Coming out of the elections from 1998 all the way to 2000, Republicans and Democrats saw about equal voter turnout among young voters at the polls. And then in 2006, there was a huge move toward the Democrat Party. Again, 2 years before Barack Obama was even on the ballot. Obviously, in 2008, we saw even more numbers shift that way. And as I mentioned, it's a deeply disturbing trend for our party. At the same time, it's important to remember that while this may be noteworthy, it's certainly not historic. As recently as 1984, Ronald Reagan captured the under 30 vote by a 2-to-1 margin for the Republican Party. And so I think it's important, first of all, that we remember it's not impossible to win the youth vote. There's nothing in our principles. Ronald Reagan ran on true conservative principles in 1984 and won the hearts and minds and votes of young Americans. At the same time, we have to remember that it's not 1984 anymore, and that the same strategies, the same tactics, the same messages are not going to work to attract young voters. Like you say, one of the most important things is simply to make the Republican Party cool again. And I do want to reemphasize that that does not mean changing our core conservative principles. It means figuring out how those principles that worked in 1984, that have in fact solved the great problems that this country has faced throughout history, how those principles apply to solving the problems of today. Young voters are interested not in tired old talking points, but in education reform and energy independence and economic growth and jobs more than anything. So when we learn how to take those conservative principles, sell them in the right way with the right strategies, the fresh messages, more than anything, the cutting-edge technology that hits to the heart of where young Americans live and work and spend all of their time online. That's how we can start reaching young Americans again.